Evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Man's Hour, episode 7 on male friendships. And I am joined by a gentleman of power here who I have the pleasure of also calling a dear friend of mine. Not me, not you, a fellow speaker from the Shieldings event earlier this year. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Red Hawk. I really appreciate you having me on. Greater men than I have written whole volumes on this topic, so this is going to be a good one.
Yeah. I've been wanting to do this topic for a while, and I also wanted to have you on for quite some time because when I met you in February at the event, you and I hit it off very, very quickly. We kind of come from the same kind of attitude on a lot of things, on manhood and plenty of other issues. So I've definitely been meaning to have you on the podcast here for sure. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Oh yeah, I mean it's always good to find like minds, especially in a more intellectual sphere. Somebody coming from the manosphere, which I think some people think is a little lowbrow, even if it's accurate.
Yeah, for sure. So we're here today to talk about male friendships, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this, and it also was the one of the biggest reasons for me starting Man's Hour in the first place, is I get the sense and the feeling from especially a lot of the young guys, a lot of the young Zoomers, that they really just don't know how to talk to other men, and they don't really know how to bond with other men in a very masculine way. I remember a story. I have younger cousins that are, like 10, 11, 12, they're growing up these days. And I just keep on hearing stories all the time of their parents having to deal with, like other kids in the class, like, whether it's bullying their kids or what have you, and making friends and everything. It just seems like an absolute hellscape, just being online from such a young age and everything like that compared to when we were kids. So one of the things I really wanted to do with Man's Hour is get established panels of guys on the show, and we can actually, talk back and forth like men, give each other shit, when we're talking to each other and make fun of each other, and just have like a very masculine atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely necessary for the younger generations. I can't tell you how many times I'm just out in public and young men just have a hard time in general with basic things like eye contact.
Mm, yeah, yeah, very much so. One of the first things I ever was taught, at a very young age when I'm, speaking to other men, especially when you're introducing to the very first time, is the handshake. So like firm eye contact, a firm handshake with a bit of a squeeze, and like it really just sets the tone. Really quickly when you're meeting somebody for the first time. Everybody knows the joke, like shake hands with a dead fish.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's kind of an art. Like you have to
Mm.
kind of get used to it because you'll shake hands with people who heard that and they think, "Oh, now I have to crush every man's hand that I shake to, establish dominance or whatever." But yeah, you're right. A handshake, it can tell you a lot about a man, whether or not it's a brittle handshake or it's overly aggressive. There's a lot said in that really simple gesture.
Mm, yeah, very much so. Women are much more like attuned to, like body language, and they just like can pick up a room and read a room much easier than men can. But that really is one of like the quickest, indicators for guys. It's like, do you have a firm handshake? Do you have good eye contact? Do you have good tonality in your voice? You're not, speaking so fast, or have like a high pitch or something. So these kinds of things are what you're looking for when you're first meeting a guy, first being introduced to another man.
Yeah, and for the Zoomers listening who find themselves a little bit out of practice and maybe a little anxious, like no, it's not something to really think about. Like even so, my priest is an extremely social guy. Obviously, he's constantly talking to people. He will shake my hand 4 or 5 times during every conversation, which is really weird. But like,
Mm,
it doesn't really change the perception of him.
mm. Yeah, very interesting. I've when I have guys that reach out to me in like my DMs on Twitter, and most often they're asking for advice on women and stuff like that. But it's very interesting to me. I mean, we make the joke in our spheres about the autistic Zoomer kind of deal, but you know, it's really not that far fetched in some cases because I get questions sometimes where guys just like, well, overanalyze basically every single interaction that can, you know, to the nth degree, down to the finest detail, and basically getting them trapped in analysis paralysis. And it's almost like, for lack of a better word, they're kind of behaving like women in the sense of they're judging uh, every little minuscule amount of what they're doing to the nth degree, wondering, who's going to judge them for it, and how does this make me look, and how does this make me feel, or how do other people feel about me or perceive me? And it's just a very foreign kind of concept to me. Have you noticed any of this at all?
Yeah, and when I was younger, I fell into the same sort of thing. Just real quick, I didn't really get into the dating pool until I was a little bit older. I was kind of a serial monogamist from about 15 to about 23. But when I
Mm,
did get finally break into the wider world of dating, I had this kind of analysis paralysis. And one of the things that the manosphere kind of taught me that I think a lot of men can benefit from is that people really do not care about you. They don't
yeah.
care about your flubs and they can't see your insecurities. They can't see inside your head. And even if they
Mhm.
could, they probably wouldn't care. So
Yeah.
just keeping that in mind is just a great way to kind of relax.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, one of the things I tell guys all the time if they're freaking out about this kind of analysis paralysis is that imagine like you're in a group chat with your friends and one guy just puts in like a link to a video and you think to yourself, oh, I don't have time to click on that one link. And it's such a minuscule task. Well, just extrapolate that into the real world. Do you think that anyone is really going to think about you like 2 minutes after you leave? Like you do like an approach with a chick and they're just going to forget you like 5 minutes afterwards if you screwed up or something like that. And kind of the same way, if you make a bad impression with somebody else. So you really, I don't really want to hammer on the guys too much because they're basically been raised in such a completely feminized world and everything like that, but it really is just womanly behavior if you're constantly being concerned about what other people think of you.
Yeah, it's quite feminine, and it is a lack of experience as you get out in the world and have all of these social interactions and realize that there aren't really consequences, or at least the consequences of them are so minuscule that you even forget them. Then it just
Mm.
becomes more natural.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely true. So let's talk about male friendships at the start here. And I can honestly say that, and this is absolutely no joke, that there are, uh, several men in my life that I would absolutely massacre entire nations for, if it came down to it to save their lives. There's absolutely no question of it. I would do anything for some of these men in my lives that I've known in some cases my entire life. We grew up together, we've stayed in touch, our entire lives, and we've been through absolute thick and thin, and absolutely nothing is ever going to break that friendship. No matter what anyone is going to tell me about this guy, I've got his back, no matter what, to the gates of hell itself.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those in my life as well, and I spend time thinking about and talking about those sorts of relationships with my other friends, specifically with I've got some female friends, and they always have issues with their friendships. And as the manosphere teaches us, and that I taught them, is women have allies and men have friends,
Mm, yeah.
and I think that stems from our evolutionary history as hunters. You need to be able to trust the man that you're with, and that's another reason why adversity that is shared between men builds such strong bonds rather
Mm.
than just people you have like fair weather friends, like people you see at parties or just when things are happy. It's really the ones that you suffer with that you'll bond with the most.
Yeah, yeah. Men generally bond through experiences with each other. This is often why whenever guys get together and actually talk about something, we never gather just to talk. We gather to do something together. Some of the most heartfelt conversations you'll ever have with other men are when you're out doing something. You're out at a gun club together, or you're at a cigar lounge and you're smoking a cigar, or you're working on your buddy's truck or something together. That's when the real heartfelt conversations come out, when you're doing something together.
Yeah, and men are beings of action, and
Mm,
that's when we're in ourselves, so to speak. When we're in our proper environment, is when we're doing things together in a cooperative or a competitive way.
yeah, very much so. I mean, if anyone's been on a sports team, you'll know this very much. I mean, like scrimmages in a practice or something like that. You're like on a football team. Split the teams up into two sides, and even though you're practicing and fighting with each other, on the field, when you actually get out there in a game, you guys are brothers in arms, so to speak.
Yeah, and same thing with anybody in the military. Um,
Mm,
for my part, it really comes out when I do a cold weather camping with a particular friend of mine. Um, you get out to you we'll hike out to where we're going to camp. We start setting up camp, and then for however many hours of sunlight we have left, it's basically a race to gather enough firewood for the night. And during those hours of like, it's largely silence between us, but just the action of both of us working towards a goal that is not only like, it's fun, but it's also necessary for us to basically survive the below freezing temperatures in the evening, because we only go out there with a couple of tarps and some sleeping bags.
mm.
That itself is a bonding experience, even though no words need to be shared.
Right. Yeah, very much so. It's almost like I wouldn't quite call it a shit test because, the shit test kind of refers to something different with the women, but it's men are, we test each other in different ways to become like, friends. I would say that like the barrier to entry could be, much higher to get into like the core inner circle of your guy friends. But once you're in there, I mean, you're pretty much locked in. Aside from a truly egregious act, there's not much that would make me turn on one of my friends or kick them out of my inner circle.
Yeah, and this is something I mentioned at the event. It's that phrase we hear, like so many like throwaway phrases people use today. The blood is thicker than water is a bastardized version of the older the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb,
Mm,
meaning that the blood that you share with your peers, with fellow men, will build bonds that are stronger than even your closest familial ties. And that's something we've kind of lost as a society, because that's the hyper masculine. That is
mm.
the construction of the manor bund, as some would put it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, modern day society wants men to be sedated. They want men to be alone. They don't want men to get together in their own spaces because that's when action happens. Women never build societies and never change societies, and they never will. They already enforce the man's will upon the next generation. They're not the ones that are out changing the status quo or building a new code of laws or expanding territory. It's always men that do this, and it's always groups of men specifically that do this. You can look at all kinds of studies about. So let's say I knew I forget the study, but so they were doing the military training exercises. I think it was in like the RAF in Britain, and they had three divisions. They had an all male division, an all female division, and then a mixed division, and they were running like war games. And of course, the all male division did the best. Second to that, surprisingly, was the all female division. And then it was the, integrated division did the worst. And it's absolutely vital for men to have spaces specifically for themselves that aren't influenced by women in any way. And that's when the real shit gets done. And that's when, guys can actually be expressive and their true selves, essentially. Because the moment you get a woman into the equation, it just throws off the energy to such a degree. I made this joke earlier a couple streams back, but even at our US event, there was Mrs. Radlib, there was Yiz, and then there was one other girl at the event. And when the one other girl showed up in the room, all, 25, 20, 30 boys just immediately ran over to, immediately swarm this chick. And the atmosphere immediately changes.
Oh, absolutely. I do a quarterly, I just call it a boys' night. I've got a really big dining room table, and I have all the men that are in my life in different ways, either through my business or through various political events or from high school that I'm still close with. We get together and we feast and we banter and we smoke cigars. And one of my friends asked, can I bring my wife? I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, good for you for enforcing a boundary like that. But yeah, you absolutely need those moments when guys are gathering because for all the shit that Donald Trump got back in the day. I remember this in like the leading up to the 2016 campaign where they caught him on a hot mic with the grab him by the pussy like locker room talk and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And any man who is actually worth his salt knew immediately it's like, oh, like I've heard way, way worse, in any group like around a bunch of men. It's just how men talk. They were trying to, you know, uh, uh, slander Trump as like, oh, this hateful, misogynist, and how could he dare do this? And I was like, oh, you know what? That's actually pretty base. He actually sounds like a normal human being, like a
Yeah, it
normal
sounds like a
man.
bro.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and this is something I used to so like I'm in my early 30s, well, mid 30s now, early mid 30s. There we go.
Mhm.
And even when I was in my late teens, early 20s, like I kind of intuited that whenever there was a woman in the group, like people just acted differently.
Mm,
And I would tell my friends this, and we were young millennials, the internet was just getting spun up. We were deep into the the equality culture. Oh, there's no difference between men and women. But as they got older, they started to see it too. And it's this immutable uh just social truism with humans that men act a certain way around men because we understand that at the end of the day there's the implied threat of violence, which
mm.
all men understand implicitly, and that has to be tempered and restrained as soon as a woman enters the room, and that will happen unconsciously.
Yeah, very much so. And you see this a lot. Me and Semigog have actually talked about this many times that when you get into like let's say like a loud nightclub or something like that, you'll see this play out many times actually if you pay attention that a girl is often the first person to start like some kind of problem or some kind of scuffle or fight or something like that. And it's not normally a man because anytime a man has a conversation with another guy, there, like you said, there always is that, in the back of everyone's mind that somebody could get choked here. At any given moment, it could come out to fisticuffs and blows. So what's that they say? Like the guy who can't fight is always the guy who's the most boisterous. And it's just the exact same thing with women in these kinds of situations. They can, get up in somebody's face and cause all sorts of problems because there's that implied sense that at any moment, violence isn't going to break out. But in the same sense that men do, there's like an aura of respect that is always present in these rooms.
Oh yeah, and to quote the great American poet Vinnie Paz, "I can tell you pussy because you the loudest in the room." It's and that that's another universal truth. Like because men are beings of action, and women especially today who and this is not just it's not just women who don't understand their proper role in society, but it, this idea that women are as capable as men or can do the same things as men leads them to picking fights because they've never experienced the consequences of those sorts of things in the way that men have or understand that they will if they
Mm.
get into a fight.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. This is especially a really big problem with, like the girl boss, female superhero movies and stuff like that, where women are basically just deluded into thinking that, oh, I'm Scarlett Johansson in Black Widow and I can just, ninja kick a guy right in the face and it's going to put him down on the ground. And this is actually a really funny thing that you guys could test. Like, whenever you're with like a girlfriend or something, just ask her, like, one day, just try and move you and just watch. Like she's gonna try with all of her might, to put all of her weight into you and stuff like that to get you to move an inch, and it's not gonna work. When you got 50 pounds on somebody, and stronger bone density and muscle tension, it's like it's not gonna work.
Yeah, and just to just come back around to the topic that we were originally discussing. Um, I just have a little anecdote. My oldest friend, my closest friend. We've been friends together now our entire adult lives, and we've reached this point where I can see a look on his face and then follow his gaze, and within a fraction of a second, I can speak the words that are going through his head. And they like it's kind of a we both do this to each other, and it's kind of uncanny. And it's just something we notice now after like nearly 2 decades of friendship. But that's one of those things that so men can experience that with each other through shared experience and shared values, and especially shared hardship. But women can only really experience that with a sexual partner, with their husband that they've
Mm.
been with for a sufficient amount of time. I don't think I've ever known a woman who's had a friendship that close.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I chose for the thumbnail for this video, I chose Frodo and Sam scaling mountains of Eredruin to get to Mount Doom, and that really is it, it's kind of the shit that really pisses you off because it's like the progressives that have launched after it, calling like, oh, like this kind of romance like is gay or something stupid like that,
Yeah.
But it truly is like you know there are bonds I have with guys that are absolutely, like that, through absolute thick and thin. And that's really just how you know that your guy has you back, your bro has your back. You're doing something together, whether it's the gym, whether it's, going out to a club and you guys are picking up chicks together or, whatever it is, through action like that, you form a bond that is, completely unbreakable.
Yeah, and you even see it in the modern parlance that's kind of built up around modern male friendships. Women will jokingly refer to it as a bromance,
God, I hate that
because
term so much.
yeah, the only way that they can conceptualize feeling that strongly for another person or bonding that strongly for another person is if they're romantically engaged.
Yeah, it's a
It
very good point.
and for men, it's just and I go back to this evolutionary psychology thing. Like, we had to rely on one another. We
Mhm.
had to develop these silent bonds where you knew that either in the war band or the hunting party that you could glance at the guy next to you and he could glance at you. You'd both be on the same page, and you wouldn't have to speak in order to convey meaning.
Yeah, you could potentially scare away game or alert your enemy or whatever it might be. But yeah, you're absolutely right that, I could point to this, just from seeing one of my buddies like across the bar or something, and we just like lock eyes and we both know that, it's on and we're doing something. I've
Yep.
You know, I've uh, I've never shared the story on air before. But I'm gonna share it. So there was an incident, maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago now, and me, a bunch of my buddies from our college days, we all got to back together. We're all spread out over the country, but I'm really proud of us that we've done a really good job of everybody is, we get together, 6 or 7 times a year, and each of our guys like hosts everybody, in their house, and everybody comes up and visits. But
Mm.
we were having a big house party at one of these guys' houses. He's a little bit more of the wild side for us, and it was a house party with about 40 or 50 people in there. And I was upstairs playing some drinking games with some other guys, and I heard like a scuffle was going on downstairs. And I'm walking down the stairs, and as I'm walking down, I catch eyes with one of my bros from across the room. And at that point, I was like, something's not right here. And then he came up to me. He's like, what happened was a bunch of guys that we hadn't known got invited by another guy, and they were starting to fight. And one of the guys pulled out a Glock
Oh,
at this fight. And when my bro and I locked eyes from across the room, I swear to God, man, I had never sobered up so quickly in my entire life. Like, we got switched on right away. It's like, okay, it's time to go. And there were, a couple guns upstairs, and a couple of the guys went and grabbed them, and we ended up getting these guys out of the house and everything like that. No casualties or anything like that. But that really was a moment when I was like, oh shit, like my guys have got my back. They know what's up. We are the guys that don't recoil from shit going down or anything like that. So that was a very, very interesting experience for me, and one that is just locked into my brain for forever.
Oh yeah, and that's an intense experience, and I pity the men who haven't had experiences like that with their fellow men, or even worse, men who fear intimacy with their fellow man, because it really is a uniquely masculine and beautiful, and there's a metaphysical transcendence to the bonds of friendship between men. And like you were saying in your story, you saw your friend's face, and whatever it was, his facial expression, his posture, just the look in his eye, all of those things combined that you can't quantify or rationalize, spoke to something primordial in you, and you immediately knew, all right, danger is here, and the time to act is now. And that's all it took. And
Yeah,
that it's something that you were absolutely right when you said earlier that society does not want men forming these bonds, because these bonds are stronger than pretty much any other.
yep, yep. It's like I'm almost getting choked up just reliving this memory because I was never a military man or anything like that, so I never served to that extent. And it really was just one of those moments, like almost like transcendent, almost. Like something that like lies dormant in all of us was just awoken all of a sudden. It's like, okay, now it's time to go to war. We've got stuff to do. One of our guys is in trouble. That this is the time for action. And every one of my guys, all five of them in this house of like 50 people, like names are getting screamed at, like time to go. And it was absolutely wild. It really just was like a one look. And as I said, I mean, like there have been like alcohol and drinks involved, and I'd never sobered up that quickly in my entire life. Within like 5 minutes, like, okay, it's time to go. Adrenaline's on. Let's rock.
Yeah, and that's that like it like I'm no stranger to violence, but I don't really like it. It's never
Mhm.
something I've really reveled in. Like I enjoy, like, the rolling and the sparring and things like that, but when it comes down to actual fighting, that build up before violence is called for is I hate it. Like that anxiety that just grips you. You're like, all right, I know violence is about to start, but it's like one of those things where once it grips you, like, you're in it. You know you can't turn away. You know you have to follow through. And especially when your friends are involved.
Mm,
If you'll indulge me a story as well.
go for it.
Um, Basically, a friend of mine were out drinking with like a bunch of other guys. Night was winding down. We put all of our friends into Ubers, but he and I didn't. There wasn't enough room, so we decided to walk back to the apartment. Somebody was asking us for help, and I was like, "Well, it's late, fine." So we ended up getting into a fight with this guy, with these three guys, and I headbutt one of them. My buddy throws him on the ground. I turn on the other two, but from behind me, I can hear my friend speaking very quickly, which tells me something's wrong. I turn around, he's on his back, he's in spider guard, and there's someone else that wasn't there before standing over him. And so the only thing that I could think of was these two guys behind me are a threat, but I don't care. My friend's in danger. So, I
Mm,
dive on the guy. I bring him to the ground. I try to choke him out. He slips away. I end up getting stomped by like seven dudes. But that whole thing where, like, the most that in that moment, the most important thing was that I got my buddy out of danger. That was the only thing that mattered to me.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. I won't mention names here, but some of our friends that you and I would both know, friends from the Skillings community and stuff like that. When I was hanging out with a couple of them several months back, we also got into a scrape in a spar with some guys when we were leaving a bar, and at that point, like, you know, that was when I really, really knew it was like, okay, these guys are in my corner. Like we met a couple times, like our political events and everything like that. But when you're really in a fisticuffs situation like that, And when punches are getting thrown and these guys have your back and they're in your corner, absolutely. No, that was a very much a bonding experience, despite the dangers and everything involved.
Yeah, now that I am envious of. I'd love to hang out with you guys and get in a punch up.
Yeah, I'll tell you about the story off air. It's a funny circumstance that came about. But uh, so one of the other things I wanted to talk about here is that I mentioned like the term shit test earlier, and again, it's not like the correct term, but I don't really have a better one for it. But whenever you get into a group of guys, um, who've been friends for a really long time, they're always making fun of each other, like immediately, and it's very interesting because like your buddy will come up to you and say, "Oh, what's up, asshole?" or "What's up, you bundle of sticks," or something like that. And
Yeah.
you have if you had like a stranger like come up to you and say that, it's like, okay, that's not cool. But when you have your guys do it, it's almost like a passive way of saying, you're in the group, you're part of the in group. I can rely on you because if I can make fun of you and shit's not going down, then we're real tight.
Yeah, it's like it's like a handshake. It's a way of you displaying that you guys trust one another. And like I've been in the trades not too long now, but long enough to see on job sites like this is just a thing that goes on, like not even between friends, but people who are just working together on the same project. Maybe they're in different companies, maybe they're in different trades, maybe this is like the fifth or sixth time they've seen one another. And this it is essentially a shit test. Uh and the same sorts of tactics, it's which is really weird to think about, work for these shit tests that work on women. So that agree and amplify thing. Like
Mm.
if some guy calls you like, you've got a tiny dick and you're just like, "Oh yeah, man, like I carry around a microscope just to show off to women." Like they'll laugh, you laugh, and then you can call them an asshole. And like it's another form of like, all right, I can trust this guy. Like he doesn't take himself too seriously and he can give it back.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone follows me on Twitter, you'll actually see this a lot when I'm interacting with some like the higher up manosphere guys. And I was very careful to do this. You know, I had to play my cards right, kind of deal. Because I'm like the new guy coming up in the spheres and everything like that. And there's been multiple times, when some of the really really big accounts have all like dogpiled on me and stuff like that. And it is like a passive shit test at the start. And everyone's like making fun of each other back and forth and stuff like that. And now I've got quite a few of them that are following me, and I've spoken to a bunch of them now, and we're making jokes about each other. So it's almost like the exact same thing as well. Like people online are tagging people like there's like a short guy in the group, and they will tag him in and say, oh, someone forgot like Aaron Clary's shoes or whatever. When there's like a really small guy in like a picture for a news article or whatever the hell it is. So it's yeah, it absolutely is like almost like an entrance into the group, so to speak. Like are you going to be a little pussy and like cry and whine and like really try to defend yourself like from what are obvious jokes and stuff like that? And if you can get through this gauntlet, so to speak, okay, you're one of us. You're in the group. We got you.
Yeah, and it's like what you were saying before. If we're addressing again men who might be listening that have a hard time in the social sphere, like again, it's just like with women, you can't be afraid to look the fool, because we
Mm,
all do, and that's just life. Now, I'm not saying like don't be a clown. Obviously, don't be so self-deprecating that people think that you're depressed or you hate yourself or that no one else should respect you either. But like respect is something that's built and earned over time, and it's just little things that will build it. So you just can't be afraid to jump into the foray and see what comes out of it, and
yeah,
you'll learn.
yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to that famous, like I think this was like a Camille Paglia quote, and then of course Raul Tomasi has used it a bunch as well. Is that women are and men must become. There's not
Mhm.
a there's not a single thing in a man's life that is just going to be given to you. It's just not nature in the existence of being a man. you have to earn everything. And even in like a group of friends or something like that, you have to earn entry into that group. So it might not work the first time, might not even work the first 10 times, but eventually, if you just keep your cool and don't take things too seriously on this regard. And then once you're in with a group of other guys, then you guys will know at what point when shit's allowed to go down. Like there's guys in my friend group that in times of need they've come up to me and we've had those like one-on-one moments where like the tears come out, kind of deal. Like it's
Mhm.
something really really bad has happened to this guy and he needs one of his bros, and it's like, okay, we're dropping everything, we're taking care of our guy.
Yeah, and like again to echo the point before, like that's not weakness, that's not it's not gay. It's like it's just uh, I mean no man is an island, and
Mm,
if you've got a strong brotherly bond with somebody, then they're going to understand, even if you've never expressed these sorts of things before. If you've known them long enough, they'll get it when it happens, and they might not know exactly how to respond, but they'll entertain it for a little while before calling you a flamer. So
yeah, 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 absolutely. And especially if they're one of your guys, they understand, like they understand how to hold you accountable in certain situations. They understand when you need I won't necessarily call it comfort, but they know when to lift you up and pull you through something, and they also know when to check you on your bullshit as well. Like let's say you're simping for a girl, or you're skipping out on the gym, or you're eating too much, or whatever it might be. Having a good group of guys at your back will hold you accountable when you're struggling with something.
oh yeah, and that's something that's kind of come out. Like I hear hints of it now and again that still linger in society. That you are who you hang out with, and that's definitely like true with men. If you have a friend that if you sit down and think, all right, what do I admire about this person, and you can't come up with anything, then you should probably find better friends.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. If your five best friends are drunk, smoking weed, fat, losers, you're gonna be the sixth.
Yeah, and that's that's something that's easy to fall into because it you have those bonds of friendship even with shitbags, and that's just you can really get sucked down that rabbit hole if you don't look out for it.
Yeah, for sure. So, what would you say to, let's say, like we've got a young guy who's coming up right now. Maybe he's in his early 20s. Maybe he was, raised by a single mom and has had largely, mostly feminine figures throughout the schooling system and everything like that. What would you say to him when he's looking for, mentorship or looking for male friends, or something like that? Where do you think he should start?
Just strike up conversation. So, like, one of the things that if you're not familiar with, or if you're a woman, will seem odd, is that if men sit next to each other on an airplane or at a bar, they'll start talking about sports. Now,
Mm,
like, I don't give a shit about sports, but I will talk about sports to any man, especially if I don't know him, because all it is it's a Y chromosome opening to a potential bonding. So you can
mm,
easily segue from that to something that you are interested in. And like so just be bold. If there's someone you're like, oh, that guy looks cool, hey, talk to him about anything. Talk to him about sports. If he doesn't want to talk, he'll let you know, and then you could just be like, all right, you just move on.
mm.
And then just one other thing, don't put on pretenses, don't put on airs, just be earnest. If if like don't be like an asshole, but if you disagree with somebody on something, just be like, yeah, I don't know if that's really my thing. Like don't ever pretend with, I mean, this works for women too, don't ever pretend to be into something you're not, or
Mhm.
to take a position that you don't hold, because it's other people can see that, even if they can't articulate it, they can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're describing right there is kind of like the basis of like establishing a frame for yourself. Like you don't need to be the secondary character in somebody else's story, in the sense of you just have to, be the pushover and agree with whatever they want you to agree with, or whatever it is at that time. I mean, and of course, being a man is, like you can like read the room to some extent, like say you're in like a college classroom or something and you just want to skirt by and, get your grades. You don't necessarily need to be, preaching about the mid-century Germans, in your class or anything like that, but it, you don't, you don't need to be forced into like an archetype that somebody else has written for you.
Yeah, and so uh, I've been working on this theory about where the hyper reality comes from, and we get a lot of if you're a man who hasn't been socialized in the real world, chances are you've been socialized through your television or through your Netflix account or through the movies you watch. And just keep in mind that those things, the way that those men act, their scripts written by members of a specific tribe most of the time
Mm,
that have a specific ideology that they're trying to push. Don't try to adopt another persona. Don't think about like, okay, I've seen this like conversation happen on television, or like if you do recognize something that's happening, realize where that recognition might come from, because you can think that there's a way that you're supposed to react to a situation, but there isn't one. Just
mm,
react the way that is natural for you.
yeah, absolutely. For sure. Like in the quest for own space, I guess, as Bap would put it, you know, uh, your job is the central essence of being a man almost is that sense of claiming your own space, and that's just not referring to a physical place, whether it would be like your specific property, but it's also just your mental place in the world, your views on things, your convictions, whatever your morals, your whatever that may be. You craft that for yourself, as a man. Women often will just get fed their own opinions on things from another male figure, whether it's a father or a boyfriend or a husband or whatever it is. Their survival strategy is to attach onto somebody else who has skills that they don't have. But your job as a man is to create your own skills and then partner up with other men who might have different skills than you.
Absolutely. And as you're building this, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail, and you're going to fail, and you're going to have some successes. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of any of that. It's just part of the process, and it makes you a stronger person.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What is it they say about Atlas? He didn't ask for a weaker load; he asked for stronger shoulders.
Yep.
Yeah, very much so. Um, so let's get back to like just making fun of your guys and stuff like that, because it truly must be it, it it's got to be something really interesting to witness. When let's say you take like when I take like a girlfriend or something, or my friends will take a girlfriend to like a gathering of like me and a bunch of the other guys, it's not like we're gonna stop, being the guys just like when a chick goes into the room. Like these bonds of these guys, supersedes any woman that comes into the group.
Mm.
So I've often wondered how like interesting it must be to see like a girl like come into this super masculine space that me and my friends inhabit, and everyone's just calling each other bundles of sticks, and everyone's like punching each other on the shoulder and saying the most horrendous and hurtful things to each other, but we're all just laughing at each other all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there was a phenomena in the, I don't know, and it must have been in the noughts and lasted into the tens, of articles coming out from these feminists talking about how the reason that masculinity is harmful for men is, you could see it in the way that they treat each other, because they're always calling each other names and putting each other down, and they just fundamentally do not understand that that's part of the bonding experience. And that, like, if a man thought that his friend was earnestly putting him down when he's saying these things, then there's going to be a problem, and they're going to address it. But that's very rarely the case.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Or also like and things can get heated sometimes as well. This isn't to say that like, oh you know, I mean, you hear these kinds of stories like all the time in these instances when like either a girl has some kind of fight with another one of her quote unquote friends at the time, whether it's like over a guy or over something stupid, and then they just you know kind of like conspire with all the other women in the group just to ostracize that woman like that. And it's just not like that. For guys, it's not necessarily like a you know search and destroy kind of deal. Like if you're causing problems, like in our group, we'll pull you aside and try and figure out what's up with it like that. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It would really take something extremely egregious for me to uh, discontinue a friendship with one of my guys. I mean, like, and of course, like, sometimes you get into like legitimate fights, when you're pissed off at each other sometimes, or, will get in a heated argument or something like that, or whatever it is. It's not to say that all, male friendships are sunshines and rainbows, but, I think there is something to be said for the fact that, once you're kind of locked into that male friendship, it's much more difficult to break.
Absolutely, and it's because of what what male relationships are based on. We build our relation like we build our relationships. This sounds mercenary, but it isn't, because it's not a conscious process. Like if a man is good at something, then people will want to be his friend. Men will want to be his friend. And when when things get rocky, you're like, okay, so we're having this disagreement, but fundamentally this I still value this guy for the same reasons as I did before. And it's not and I didn't value him before because he agreed with me. And that's the difference between, men build hierarchies, women build consensus. And if a woman falls out of the consensus, well, now the reason that they're friends is gone. Whereas
Mm,
with men, it's structured in a way that isn't purely social. It's not purely emotional. There is a sort of material reason for your friendship, even
mm.
if you can't articulate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for example, like, there are, I have like a really core group of like six guys that I really hang out with, and two of the guys are like, full blown registered Democrats. Like we're totally, and it's, politics isn't why, like, we're friends. I mean, like, they know my opinions on things. Like, we're in group chats, and I'm trading like really spicy, George Floyd memes with everybody, just like everybody else. But it doesn't, it doesn't cause problems for us, because like that's not the essence of what we're there to do. When we're friends, like when we get together, it's because we've been through things together. We've had all these experiences. We've known each other for all this time, and kind of the almost like the lowbrow things, like who you vote for at the end of the day. Shit like that just fades away.
Yeah, because I mean, I've got some friends, some very close friends that are also that way, and it's it's an expression. It's a difference in some kind of expression of value. Maybe it's a difference in your linguistic understanding, or who knows where it stems from. But at the end of the day, most of the time, the men you hang out with are going to have the same values as you, even if they're expressed in a different way.
Mm,
And that's you're right. It is kind of it's the who you vote for is like at the top of whatever you've built in your life, and the foundation is where a man's friendships are found. So once you start getting higher up, it just like that stuff just doesn't matter as much, because it could all come down and you'd still be who you are at the core.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, I'm trying to word this properly, but like it's just really like I don't want to say like politics like really isn't important, because obviously like most people in our spheres, obviously it's a big part of our lives, but you know it just speaks to something deeper. Like when I met this guy, and we were just roommates from across the hall on like a college campus, and we did a bunch of stupid shit together back in the day, and we bonded over certain experiences and stuff like that, and we just come to an understanding that, oh, you've got your views and I've got my views, and we don't hate each other for it. We don't clash over it. We just, have a mutual understanding about things. We're not like lecturing each other on, how you're way of thinking is wrong and how you have to immediately come to my side of things, or we're not like, calling the other person a racist or the other person, like a moron or whatever it is. It's just, yeah, this is just the way I view things. And I respect you for having your opinions, even though I think they might be wrong. But, I'm not friends with you just because share my opinion.
Yeah, and it because it's more fundamental than that. Yeah, I mean, I've got a similar thing. Two of my close friends became friends in college. They were the only two people in their like on their dorm floor that smoked cigarettes, so they would just stand outside smoking cigarettes, and lifelong friendship arises out of it. And like those sorts of things, like that, like you never know where you're going to find a like mind and a lifelong friend. I was in a gun shop a couple months ago, and there was a guy there with like this like booklet, and he's like flipping these pages of like licenses and stuff. And he looks up, he goes, "Hey, don't we go to church together?" And like so, we've been friends since then. I see him pretty often. We you know we do a bunch of things together. I introduced him to some of my other friends. They like him. He fits right in. It's so you never know.
Yeah, that's really cool. You know, it's always very interesting to hear, there's always like a good story attached to, you ask a guy and his buddy, so like, oh, so how'd you guys meet or something? Everybody's got that one friend that met his other really good friend because like, that guy was a bully. He was like bullying him or something. He punched me one day and now we're best friends,
Yeah.
like everybody knows like some kind of, goofy stories, like that. Well,
Yeah, and you were talking about how men are very feminized today, and I know that there are some people in the circle who follow Edward Dutton, but he has this idea that the hyper feminine mind is schizophrenia, because it's fundamentally over analyzing every interaction in kind of like a hyper empathic way. And like if you're a guy and you do that, just stop.
yeah.
It sounds easy, right? But it I know for people who get anxiety about those sorts of things, like it's a matter of self mastery. And
Mm,
you can look online and find ways of mastering your mind and yourself, and all that kind of stuff. But if you are feeling that anxiety and you are hyper analyzing everything, that is something that you should change, and you can change. So
yeah.
it's worth changing because your life will be enriched by it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Like as we were mentioning earlier about how men must become something, like also just don't be afraid of failure as well because it's just part of life is being a man. In anything it might be like failure in your job to some extent. You might screw something up, or failure when you're doing like a cold approach with a girl or something like that. It's just it's part of the deal. Like nothing's going to be all sunshines and rainbows for you. And honestly, like the struggle and all the failure makes those moments of success and those moments of forming bonds with your friends and everything like that. It's just it, you know you're gonna have the highest of highs, in those kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, and following on to what you were just saying, like if you have friends and you fail in front of them, like they don't care about the failure itself. What they'll care about is how you react to it.
Mm,
If you get down on yourself and you spiral out of control and you give up, well then that's somebody that is that's someone who's unreliable. But if you fail and you're just like, all right, that sucked, that hurt, but you know what, I'm going to get up and do it again, well then that's someone, all right, you've got some constancy, you've got something that I know that I can rely on you, that when things get tough, you're not just going to give up. So experience those failures and really embrace like the bad feelings, because that's part of life. And when you can embrace those and make that a part of your personality, and not be afraid of it because you have mastery over it, because you know it's going to come and you're not afraid of it, and you just deal with it when it happens, you're going to be stronger, and the people around you are going to recognize that as well.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned this on other streams, like when me and my buddy Sixer have been talking, that we've got a guy in our really tight friend group who isn't necessarily switched on to the women question like he and I am, and we're letting him fail in this circumstance. Like we've
Hmm.
he's this chick is absolutely going to walk out on him. Probably gonna cheat on him at
Hmm.
some point relatively soon. And basically, we've been saying this for months. We're dropping little hints here and there to see if he can change his behavior. But, this is going to come crashing down. And it's our responsibility to, hold him accountable when it does come crashing down. And there's going to be tears and there's going to be hurt and everything like that. But, we're bros and we'll help you through it. But, just don't give in to despair, and we're going to help our buddy out. And hopefully he can pull himself out of it. But we
Yeah, and
can't do it for him,
exactly. People have to want to improve, and that's one of the hardest things as a friend. When you have a friend who's in a spot and he just can't pull himself out of it, and you do what you can, and maybe what you do helps, and maybe you don't see that it helps, but any gesture that you take with your friends in um, furtherance of their recovery or their growth is a good one, even if it's not immediately appreciated.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I've had it on multiple occasions, and I was also, the guy that felt this as well. That you know, throughout times you can be lured into thinking you have such a high opinion of yourself and you're above it all, and when you have those guys, they can not only pick you up when things are going down, but they can also knock you down several pegs when you're way too full of yourself. They could check you on your bullshit,
Hmm.
and keep you grounded. I mean, of course, all of your friends want you to be successful and everything like that, but at the same time, I mean, I've been pulled aside a couple times before by some of my friends say, "Hey, you're really behaving like an ass. Fucking stop." And and it's not really something like to be mad about. It's just I appreciate them for being honest. I appreciate them for holding me to account for certain circumstances.
Yeah, and I had a very similar situation actually very recently with my business partners. I was doing something, they weren't happy about it. We talked about it, hashed it out, and it's like, maybe we were a little angry, maybe we yelled at each other a little bit, but at the end of the day, we cool down. We say, "I see where you're coming from. You see where I'm coming from," and we hash it out like men.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the last things I want to touch on here before we step off here is that I'm seeing this. I don't want to point out fingers and point names at anybody, but I'm seeing it's a really big issue, especially right now and like on the online right these days. That there's just a lot of feminine behavior of going back and forth about infighting about really stupid shit that really, in the grand scheme of things, isn't important. And then what makes me even more angry on top of that is that you have you know uh, I'll call them boys because they're not men yet. Boys that are imposing, either moral codes of behavior or actions upon other people or judgments on other men, and they really have no business doing that. Like male hierarchies are, they're competence based. You have to show me what you've done. You can't just be, a young boy, telling men who are, 10 years, 15, 20 years older than you, what they should be doing. Just because you are, very smart for your age group, that doesn't pull any weight with, men in the real world here. Like you have to respect is earned. Very much so. Like a feminine view of respect is to be given to everybody, and that doesn't mean you have to treat everybody like an asshole. But for me to really like respect and take in your opinion, that's something that has to be earned.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Respect is something to be earned, and again, like you were saying, that doesn't mean treat people like assholes. The reason that like the European man, the white man, understood things like manners is because we're polite, so that we don't have to be violent. You treat people with respect so that they don't feel disrespected, because when they feel disrespected, and when I say people, I'm talking about men, they
Mm,
can resort to violence. And with the online space, we we as men are so far removed from the real consequences of social slights and disrespect that we kind of forget them, especially if you haven't experienced them before. So that implied threat
Mm,
of violence that we talked about before doesn't exist in the minds of these young men because they've never experienced it. So in basically in like I think the only real way to kind of remedy this would be to get these men to take a kind of I absolutely hate this phrase, but take a modifier of the touch grass phrase and instead touch gloves.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, some kind of combat sport or something to really set you straight. And the other thing about this as well is that this was a common point that was made by everyone who was talking about the various in-person events that we've done in this community. Um, Everyone was on absolutely pristine behavior at our event that we were at in February, the
Mhm.
Shieldings event. And even though there were people there who were, some were pagans, some were atheists, some were Christians, some were, degenerates, so to speak, like thinking about myself versus like, more of like Christian sexual ethics or something like that. And none of that stuff was a problem when men actually got into a room together and we were actually able to hash out ideas like men instead of this petty gossip bullshit back and forth online when nobody's in the same room. And it's very weird to me to see because I see guys who were at the event that are still engaging in this kind of behavior online. And it's like, dude, like we kind of went over this when we were in person. Like none of the shit really matters. Like especially for people in our circles who are basically, we're basically the soldiers at Helm's Deep, and we've got no reinforcements coming as of yet. And the Uruk-hai are coming to get us. Like we got no room for infighting here. This is really stupid and feminine behavior.
Yeah, and I think it really is just that that as like distance just makes men forget that they're dealing with real people in the real world. I mean, it makes everyone forget those sorts of things, but
Mm,
like it, it can be very detrimental in our spheres because when you lose those physical uh social interactions that come with being in person, you really do lose touch with what it is that you're doing, because
mm,
your actions and your words, they don't exist in a vacuum, they exist in reference to everyone else.
mm,
And when you forget that the other person is an actor and that the other person can be dangerous and that you cannot act and speak with impunity because it does affect other things, that you just start acting like an asshole. Like that's why 4chan is an absolute uh, uh, you know thunderstorm of shit constantly,
mm,
because there's no consequence. And it
mm.
happens on Telegram, it happens on Twitter, because you're just removed.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, this problem gets more rectified as more of these IRL events become more common and people start meeting up more and get to know each other more in person, and we can form these much tighter friendships like we were describing earlier. So the future is still bright, and we're a virgining community, so to speak. So but with the right guys leading it and the right, codes of conduct enforced, I think we have a very bright future ahead of us.
Yeah, I'm very sanguine, very optimistic.
Mm. Awesome. Well, let's wrap this up, man. Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, I've got this idea in my head about the origins of the hyperreality lying in fictional um, photorealistic media, and I plan on doing a uh, live stream about it. I was going to do it tonight, but watch this space. I'll put it out.
All right, cool, man. And then also, you did a guest piece for my Substack that everyone should go and read. And it was very well received at the time, and I encourage people to go and read it again if you haven't read it before. Uh, you know, very good piece of writing by you. what I'll plug for myself is just Man's Hour Thursdays, 7 p.m. Eastern. I myself will get back into posting on my Substack here now that winter is coming again. And other than that, I'll probably do another hunting live stream again on Saturday morning, probably. So be on the lookout for that. But other than that, be well, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.